All right. Hello. Welcome, everybody, to the last in our summer video series about the employee hierarchy of needs. I'm Sarah Braver. I'm COO of coLeague, and I'm here with Laura Cover, founder and CEO of coLeague. And today we're going to be discussing the very tippy toppy of the employee hierarchy of needs, which is incentive. And the format is that I will open by talking a little bit about coLeague, sharing about the overall employee hierarchy of needs, going a little bit deeper into incentive, and then Laura and I will have a conversation about the incentive part of the employee hierarchy of needs, but also maybe any other larger questions or thoughts that we've had about the model itself. So just to dive right in, if this is your first time joining us, I'll tell you a little bit about coLeague. So at coLeague, we bring people experts to mission-driven organizations, and we do that so we can free up leaders to focus on the most mission-critical priorities. Do that in a lot of different ways, but three main ones. Primarily, we place embedded fractional people leaders in organizations. Those can be chief people officers, HR business partners, and fractional means on an interim and or part-time basis. So it could be a just-in-time need that an organization has. It could be a temporary thing. It can be a organization that is too small to be able to handle a full-time chief people officer, but still wants that level of expertise. There's a lot of reasons why organizations come to us, but we provide fractional people leaders for all sorts of mission-driven organizations. We also do lots of consulting and support for organizations in every talent area you can imagine, from building models and frameworks to coaching leaders, to building programs, whatever it is that you have a need for in the talent world. coLeague has access to some of the best experts in the world on these topics, and we're super excited to be able to support you in that way. And then most new to our repertoire is coLeague On Call, which is a really exciting subscription service where organizations can get access to us, to coLeague, and to some of our experts, depending on what you and your organization need. But it's a much smaller service, meaning it could be a few hours per month that you need support on HR support or talent support. You could bring documents or projects that you want a second set of eyes on, that sort of thing. So please do reach out to us if you're interested in any of these services. You can get us at hello@coleaguepartners.com, or you can get either me or Laura with our first name at coleaguepartners.com. All right. And as I said, we're focused on the employee hierarchy of needs, which is a model that we put together when we were developing our talent diagnostic that helps us get a really solid idea of how to actually center your people in your talent strategy and infrastructure. And the employee hierarchy of needs answers the question, well, I have a ton of stuff that I need to do in order to build my talent strategy and infrastructure, but I don't know where to start. So the employee hierarchy of needs starts with a foundation of what our employees need most in order to just do their basic job. So that we're always putting those pieces of your talent strategy and infrastructure in first. And even if you already have some things in place, we can still rewind and go back and make sure those things are in place. So we're making sure that our employees have a strong foundation of safety and purpose. And I'll talk a little bit more about each of these in a second. That the structures are in place that set up your team to be able to access what they need in order to pursue their own goals. And then, of course, that they are able to access those things without undue barriers. And of course, today we'll be talking about the incentive, which is really thinking about the future. So when we talk about incentives, we're not just talking about financial incentives, but all the things that are involved in thinking about the future when you're part of an organization. So to recap, especially since this is the last one, most importantly, at the bottom of the employee hierarchy of needs, and I always like to say, remember, this is a hierarchy of needs, not wants. So we're not talking about things that we don't have to care about just because they're higher in the pyramid. This is the order in which we need to do them. And so with safety, we talk about employees feeling physically and psychologically safe and that they're confident that their employment is legal and secure. And the big idea here is that we're also moving beyond interpersonal psychological safety, which is highly dependent on people's skill and will and maybe even their mood, and instead make sure that the most important things are in place for employees, regardless of who might be involved in the process. For purpose, for mission-driven organizations, we often think that the mission is enough. And here we say that employees need, they know what they're doing, why they're doing it, and how their individual work connects to the bigger picture. And so that often means not just thinking about, providing an education for every child in the country, but rather this project I'm working on this week, this month, how is that connected to the larger work of the organization this week, this month, this quarter, so that people can feel a little bit better about their about their spreadsheets, if you will, just to use that as a shorthand. Um, and when they can't necessarily find the direct connection to the mission in their everyday work. And then we get to the structure layer, which is really important, especially because a lot of organizations start with structure and then they add in things like safety and purpose as a bit of a luxury. But here we've built that foundation first. And when we talk about structure, we're talking about transparent talent systems and structures that support your employee needs and goals. And by that, and our big idea here was not just going straight from the blueprint to the house, but rather making sure we're building those frameworks first. So if we know we want to have a performance management system that has lots of complex parts, we want to make sure we have something as basic as some core competencies in place, or that our managers know how to give and receive feedback. Like those most basic elements are in place before we build the more sophisticated, complicated systems. And we don't have to double back and do extra work and undo what we did before when we want to put more and new different systems in place. And then last time we talked about autonomy. And we know that employees need some level of autonomy in order to feel empowered to get stuff done. But here we're thinking about how they can effectively and independently pursue their goals and know what type of future is possible. And so when we talk about incentive, today we're going to be talking about a really specific future, a goal, what's next for me. Here we're talking about having clarity into the types of things that are next. And the big idea primarily being that regardless of the size or stage of your organization, your team should be able to pursue their goals independently and in a way that can survive organizational change. Meaning if there's turnover, if you have a restructuring, if you get a new manager, that all of those things, you're able to pursue your goals regardless of what's going on around you. And that one is a big one that I've heard from so many professionals over the years, is that they'll start working towards something, toward a career, a promotion, something new, something exciting, and then they get a new manager and it's like that all disappeared and they have to start fresh because that manager doesn't have evidence, they might say, of what you were working toward or why. And then today we are talking about incentive. And so incentive at that very tippy toppy is that employees know what's next for them. So it's not just knowing what types of things are next for them, but rather like they have an idea of like, I want to become a people manager. I want to, I'm thinking about moving into a specialist role. So I'm working toward that very specific goal. But they not only know what's next for them, but they know how to get the support and resources that they need to get there. And so for all of these layers, we've had a set of questions that we want your team to be able to answer in the affirmative. And here, these questions are, or statements, can they affirmatively make these statements? I know what's next for me here. So that might be exactly what we just talked about. This next one, I know how I can get more if I want it. This is one of the most common questions, the most common scenarios I see particularly with newer professionals is, they want to know how to get more money. They want to know how to get promoted. They want to know how to get more professional development stuff. They want to know how they can get more, right? And not in a greedy way, but they want to know like, how do I? And it's crucial when you're thinking about your talent strategy and infrastructure that they can answer those questions, right? That they know how to get more. And that it's very clear that more responsibility may or may not lead to XYZ, or that in order to get more money, you need to do XYZ. That because people will often just be quote gunning for a promotion, and we've talked about this ad nauseum during these presentations, essentially that often I left because I didn't know how to get promoted turns out to be 6 or 8 different things that were going on. And so related to some of the other things, next, I can see the direct impact that my work has on the mission. So before, we're making sure that they can connect their work to the larger work of the other teams, their colleagues. But here, people have a really clear picture of, if I do this, then I know that this impact is going to happen. And then lastly, people can think about their long-term career, not just their career in this organization, which is a very important thing to continue and bolster that psychological safety, that people can feel confident and comfortable talking about their future, even if it isn't there in that organization. Most folks don't stay in jobs longer than 2 or 3 years, and that's just the reality of what it is. And so helping build your team's careers, even if it's not just an investment for your organization, it is an investment in the mission. It is an investment in the larger work that's happening toward the things that you're trying to achieve. So you're still contributing to the mission by supporting your direct reports growth, even if it isn't for a specific job in your company. And so I think the most significant one here is this. This is what people want. They want to know how to get more. So when I think about that incentive tip top, this is primarily what I'm thinking about is how do I, if I know I want this promotion, how can I get it? If I know I really want an increase in salary, I know that means XYZ more responsibility. Those are the types of things that really can cap off that individual set of angst that employees have about the future. And so reframing a lot of this that we've talked about over this summer, and we think about this in sort of 3 chunks. Those first 2 parts of the pyramid being the foundation, safety and purpose, those things must be in place for any of your other talent strategy and infrastructure initiatives to work. If people feel anxious, if they don't understand what's going on, if there's a lack of transparency, and they don't feel psychologically safe, they don't feel connected to the work, then no matter what you put in place later, the only thing that's going to come up is that anxiety. It might sound like, it might take the form of, like I said earlier, I don't know how to get promoted, but it's probably related to something here in this foundation. So then we can add those structures and get ready to build for the future. So that's the frameworks that we put in place, the basic management model, the basic org structure, those things so that people feel comfortable and confident when we build on those additional systems. And then we can start thinking about the future. With autonomy, we talked about, I know what types of paths are available to me. And then lastly, when we get to incentive, I know exactly what may or may not be next for me here. And so the big question is always, well, what are the talent strategy, systems, infrastructure things that are related to these things? So in that foundation, that's your legal compliance, your job descriptions, your manager one-on-one, meaning, their one-on-ones are happening at all. Feedback is happening at all. There's a clear mission and vision. When we get to structure, we get to things like hiring systems. We have company goals and team goals. We have values and competencies. We have a decision-making model. These are the frameworks onto which everything else will be built. And then when we get to the future, we're thinking about job leveling. So not just titles, but also like, what does it mean to be a manager? What does it mean to be a leader? What does it mean to be a director? All of those types of things. So actually laying out those specific levels and what it means to move between those levels. The promotion process, right? So how is that related to your performance model? How is that related to that job leveling? Career pathways, which is, again, this is all finagling of the same stuff into the various models that people want and need. And of course, a compensation model that feels fair, that feels reflective of all of these other systems that we've put in place. It doesn't feel arbitrary. And they can trace it back to, I know what my job is. I know what I'm working on. I know why I'm working on it. And I know where I'm going and I know how to get there. If your team can say those things, then you can feel confident that they're going to be able to get things done. They're going to be able to focus and they're going to be able to talk to you about the future. And all of this entire thing started because people cannot have a reasonable conversation with their manager about the future if they don't have a good job description. If they don't have those basic things in place, it makes them feel crazy and it creates lots of misalignment, miscommunication, which can lead to resentment, frustration, burnout, all those things that we know everybody's experiencing at work these days. So the big idea here with incentive is that, and it's related to the whole model, is a lot of things need to be in place before employees can have a realistic conversation about the future. They need to know that they're safe. They need to know that there's something to build on before they can really imagine what's next. So the stronger that foundation, the more specific you can be with your team about what's possible. And it's okay if you're in early stages of an organization or you're very small to be a little vague. This is as specific as you can get based on the reality of your organization, right? If you're not a big enough or mature enough organization to have a multi-tiered career pathways model, that's okay. You have to find a way to talk about what is possible to talk about so that you're not being unnecessarily vague, but you're also not making promises that you can't fulfill. So Laura, what do you think about all this? You've heard me talk about this a lot.
I know. I feel like it's going to be a little bit sad in a couple weeks when we're not just chatting
I
about the
know.
employee hierarchy of needs at 12 o'clock and 12:30. Okay, so I do have a couple questions for you specifically about the incentive, like that tippy top, and then I also have some like sort of overall questions to
Okay.
talk through. So starting at the incentive piece, one of the things that you talk about, the questions people can answer is, I know what my next steps are.
Mhm.
What if the next steps aren't at that organization? What and the organization knows it, right? Like the person's ready to be the CEO. There's one CEO. She's not planning on leaving anytime soon or whatever, right?
Yeah.
Like, what can managers or leaders do in those situations?
It's such a good question. And it's a thing I wish I could wave a magic wand and give everyone comfort in these situations and not feel awkward and weird. But my approach to this is always to be as realistic as possible and to be as supportive as possible. If you want somebody to be doing a good job now, but their next step is not here, that's okay. You can support them until their very last day and you can sort of set them up for success in their next role. And I think if you're talking about someone as senior as someone who wants to be a CEO or an executive director, what a gift to have somebody who has those skills and those desires working in your organization, thinking about their next steps. So there's some relationship building opportunities there to support them and with your own network and all of the ways that they might benefit from your expertise and your network. If they are thinking about that future, how can they be doing other mentoring and guiding and teaching? Because a big part of those more senior roles is mentorship. So how can they be practicing some of those things now? If you as an organization want to send your people on to success into awesome things, then preparing them for that makes you look good as well. So whatever you can do to help them maybe prepare for interviews, even because those CEO interview processes can last months, maybe even 6 months long. And so it's not I want to be a CEO and then the next day you're a new CEO. That's like a whole thing. And so knowing you want your people to be successful and you want to look good because when they make their announcement, used to lead at this organization, now is leading at our organization, then hopefully you've really set them up for success. And this is my message about everything, which is don't be afraid to talk about what's true. Don't be awkwardness is the enemy of getting stuff done, right? Like just push through it. It's okay to feel a little weird and feel a little uncomfortable. Now, if you're not talking about someone who's nearly as senior as that, where you have this tremendous opportunity, maybe have somebody who, the only opportunities for them to get promoted are into people management. They don't want to be a people manager. That they're not ready or not really equipped to be a people manager. It's a different situation. I would say the more junior they are, the more you should be thinking about helping them move on. So that they can get into a role where they can think more clearly about their future. Because if the future isn't for them here, support them, help them as long as they're succeeding in their current role. Like it's a different story if they're not succeeding in their role. But supporting their career means supporting their career, even if it's not with you. That can be expensive because then you're thinking about talent acquisition. But again, the less awkward you are about it, people don't feel like they have to be secretive. And then you can activate your networks for them. There's so many positive things that can happen when you don't treat it like a covenant has been broken and treat it as a really standard thing that happens to everyone in jobs all the time.
It does make me think, and hopefully this isn't like a totally dated example, but back when I was learning how to be a manager, there was like the manager that we were learning from, or like the books we were reading were by Jack Welch, who was the CEO of GE. Now, there's some things that probably won't all agree with anymore. Like you should just be firing the people that are the lowest 10%, stuff
Yeah.
like that. But the thing that I'm thinking about from what you were saying is like he was CEO for 20 years at GE. And he was known for being someone who creates the next round of CEOs for other companies. And
Yeah.
so people really wanted to go work for him because it
Mhm.
wasn't they were going to work for him because they were going to become the CEO of GE. Like, he might be there for a while,
Yeah.
but they knew. And so I also just love the like branding of you as an organization as
Mhm.
we are creating a pipeline of talent for other organizations. And
Right.
it comes back, right? Like those people that
Mhm.
then go to other organizations will partner with you to work on something together in the future. So
Yeah.
anyway, I'm just sort of adding to
Yeah.
that same concept of like this is actually a win-win, even if it is some more
Yeah.
resources right now.
And you and I both have experience at organizations who had this built in, right? We had 2-year programs, Teach for America via citizen schools, where it was in our best interest to make sure that people could move on successfully to other organizations because it sort of spread the word and made the whole world better by sending people out equipped. And I think if we take that mindset into non-fellowship type jobs, non-cohort type jobs, it could go a long way for a lot of professionals.
Yeah, no, that's great. Okay, so one more incentives question for you, but if people can answer yes to some of those questions that you have an incentive, does that automatically mean that that's where you are as an organization?
Mm,
How do you think about,
that's a good
I don't know,
question.
like when sort of you've like made it up to that point?
I'm gonna pull up so I can see the questions again and make sure that I'm answering this. Here, I'll put it up on the screen. Okay, so let's say somebody can definitely see the direct impact their work is having. They're working on skills for the long-term career, but there isn't, let's say, a really clear, I know how to get more money. I mean, this is something every organization I've come into as a new leader, or usually as the founding leader, no one can answer those questions. They might have lots of professional development opportunities, but nobody knows how to get promoted. Nobody knows all that stuff. Um, I think it's okay if like we're not in the business of telling companies what stage they're in, right? We're just working with what's true and thinking about what to build next. I think if organizations can answer, if people at your organization can say, yeah, like I generally know what I'm working toward and I'm working on skills, but I don't know what's next. You simply do that bit, right? It doesn't have to be a full overhaul of your complete systems. I would say that it is a relatively big undertaking to be able to clearly answer those questions. How do I get more money? How do I get more responsibility? How do I get more opportunities? How do I get professional development? But it is worth the investment, even if the answer is we're not sure. It's worth going through and answering all of the questions so that you know where to start. Because I think getting overwhelmed, but it's easy to get overwhelmed and be like, well, we can't build this whole, promotion system because we have an XYZ. Well, that's the whole point of the employee hierarchy of needs is we can walk back to probably where you should actually start. If you don't have, excuse me, if you can't say how do you get more responsibility, then we can go back to that. Well, how do we allocate responsibility at this organization? And what's that? Do we have a job leveling at all? Like, do we know the difference between a manager and a director? Now, if it's that I want to get more responsibility, but I can't even tell you, like my manager couldn't tell you what my responsibilities are right now because I don't even have a good job description. We got to go all the way back to the bottom of the pyramid. So to answer your question, I think it's probably going to be the case that you can answer some, but not all of the questions. But I think the most important thing is walking back to as far as you can, since we have a set of questions for each of these layers of the pyramid, is go back to where you can and build back up from there. Because it never hurts to answer the questions with an I don't know, but the most important thing is I think to go back and make sure you've got that strong foundation.
That makes a ton of sense. Like I'm thinking about I can see the direct impact of my work and how it has it on the mission. Like I can imagine someone saying yes to that, but then saying no to something under safety. And
Mm-hmm.
so
Mm-hmm.
you would say, then go back to safety and make sure they can answer yes to that before you start to think about, I know what's next for me here. Like
Yeah.
that's sort of those fundamentals.
Yeah, exactly. And often that goes back to I'd have to pull up multiple other presentations when we talked about both that scarf model of those things that can really trigger anxiety in people, but also that iceberg that we showed, which says, people make the statement, I'm unhappy because X, or I'm leaving because X, or I'm mad because X. Usually there's like 6 or 8 different things that are involved in that, and taking the time to walk it back. And you don't have to do that with the employee. You can listen to the employee saying, I don't know how to X, or I'm upset about this. And you on your own, as a talent leader, as an organizational leader, as a manager, can walk back on your own and figure out, well, could they answer these questions? Don't invite them necessarily into the unwinding and the chaos, because that might just reinforce the idea that things are stressful and unclear. But you have the opportunity when you start hearing from people to go underneath that iceberg, to go lower down in the pyramid, to walk back in these questions. in order to sort of figure out, is there a thing that we can answer? And can we tell them what we can answer next? Can we tell them the order in which we'll be able to answer it? Because information makes people feel calmer. I think there's that study about people are unhappier waiting for a train if they don't know how long it is, even if the train comes in 5 minutes, versus knowing that the train is coming in 11 minutes with the sign, right? Knowing it's coming in 11 minutes makes you feel like maybe you're annoyed, but you're fine now. You can focus on something else because you know it's coming. But if there's no sign that says when the train is coming, then you're just on alert the whole time, waiting, looking down the tunnel, frustrated, not knowing, because you're thinking about, well, if I miss this train, then that's going to happen, XYZ. So I think laying out that roadmap, being clear about what's next, can create that calm, even if you don't have a good answer for them yet.
Gosh, that's so true. That's really interesting. Okay, my final question for you of the series. When you think about the entire pyramid, where do you see organizations get hung up the most?
That is such a good question. Let me look at the pyramid here. I'll put it on the screen too. I think two things. Most common is starting with structure. I think the most common mistake is we got to get systems in place. We got to put structures in place. But the systems that we pick are often appealing to people's stated wants, as opposed to things that we know organizations need first.
Mm-hmm.
And so putting in, let's say, well, we just want there to be reviews. People want performance reviews. Like, okay, well, let's do, you use a really good model, these like 2x2s. That's the most straightforward review that you could probably have without having to build a whole system. But even that is a structure and a process and a system. And if people don't have any idea how to give and receive feedback, then people will start feeling away. And that's where you get into some of that psychological safety stuff where they feel like, I don't know what's going to happen to me. If I give them this feedback, am I going to be punished for it? Are they going to get mad? Like all those we need to answer those questions first. And I think the temptation to do structure before safety is one of the biggest ones. And then lastly is missing that structure level of building the frameworks first, which is performance is just such a useful one that we talk about all the time. But again, we're tempted to build the whole thing. But if we are building a performance thing, but we don't have really straightforward core competencies and we don't have a feedback model that we all use and agree on, and so we can compare like to like and apples to apples, then you're going to end up having to go back and do it. And so creating double work by not building the frameworks first, I think is probably the second most common thing. So it's sort of ironic because it's not ironic, but safety before structure, but structure before these more complicated systems to avoid double work.
Yeah, and I'm like really stuck on that train analogy because I think it's so good. Like, so I think about, we've had clients come to us that are like, our people are saying they need to understand the promotion policy.
Yeah.
And that's obviously pretty high up on the pyramid. But when we get in there, we realize like people don't have job descriptions. They don't know how to get feedback from their managers, or managers aren't good at it, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And so there's actually something lower, but being able to say, yes, we're working on some of these things because we know what people do want eventually is this. And it's going to take us 11 minutes, but this is how it's going to look over these 11 minutes. I just think it's such a powerful way to bridge the gap of we want to fix everything all at once. And we know these are the priorities to start with.
And sharing the logic with people. Be like, we're doing this first because I think there's a lot of, sharing the end thing that's going to happen, like, even a roadmap that's like, we're going to do this, this, and this, but the why behind it is so important. Like, we really want to be sure we have a shared understanding of what good collaboration in this organization looks like before we start rating people on their collaboration. Feels like a reasonable thing, but you'd be surprised at how rarely people give the why. It doesn't have to be an academic level of why. Not everyone has to be a systems designer or have a deep understanding of the every intricacy of your talent strategy and infrastructure, but your people are smart and they want to know why. And it will make them feel better. It's the 11 minutes. And if it's a delay because there was some trash on the tracks, not because the whole system is shut down and we don't know when it's coming, right? So it's here's why, here's how long it's going to take. And if the whole thing isn't coming for a whole year, here are the stops along the way that are going to help us get there. And if you're like, but I need a promotion between now and then, great. You know what's coming now. Maybe we can work on an individual exception just for you. But you don't have to wonder what are the steps to get there.
Yeah. Yeah. And the organization was promoting people before you started working on any of this stuff before. So
They sure were.
That's great.
Yeah.
Sarah, thank you so much for this. I
You're
really do
welcome.
believe this framework is just such a powerful way to help organizations think about how to handle the many, many things that are coming their way when it comes to people and talent. And you know, the more we talk about it, the more it just makes more intuitive sense. And so I'm excited for organizations to start trying this out, seeing where it fits within their worlds, and then definitely get back to us to let us know what they're seeing.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Laura. It's been really fun discussing it.
All right. See
All
you
right.
soon.
Bye, everybody.